figured I'm going to make a video and show you guys the reality of an altering pH and also pH crashes, what can happen, how you can lose your fish in this scenario, and how you can remedy this when it does happen, because these seem to be some of the things that are not covered in majority of the videos on YouTube, and these are a lot of the questions that you guys always have for me. So I figured this is going to help some of you guys, and the one advice I can give you guys is that if you don't have to alter your pH, don't alter your pH. If you 2.5 liters. So this tank, which is on the other side, went from 5 to 6.47, 6.5. It's almost 6.6. Okay, so 6 cups of water. You see that, right? You see the difference? So I didn't do a lot of water in there. I only added 6 cups, and that's how much pH came up. Now this is not going to stay here. This is going to drop over the next 24 hours, but right now it's a huge jump. So now I cannot add any more water. I'm just going to leave the tank as it is, and just going to let the fish chill, and then I'm going to come back to this a few hours later and bring up the pH a little bit more again. Just want to document that for you guys.
Produced by Malik.
What is going on, world? Welcome back to AquaMalik. This video is going to be covering how you can remedy a pH crash when it happens. These two tanks have a pH crash. This water is from this particular tank, which actually has the lowest pH out of the two. This water is about 4.8 pH. I measured it. I'll show you guys through the video in the measurement. This tank's at about 5.25 pH or 5.3 pH, which is not so bad, but here the fish are going to start dying in the next couple of days if I didn't remedy it. So I took out a bunch of water. I moved some of the water from here to here. I talked about exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to explain exactly how you can fix this problem, how you can avoid this, and what you need to do. And the first piece of advice is do not let this happen in your aquariums unless you are an experienced fish keeper. This is when you lose fish and you will have no idea how your fish died, and you will go online and you will ask for advice, and people will give you all kinds of solutions and tell you to put all kinds of medications, which in turn could kill more of your fish. When you try to remedy this problem by doing a water change, if your incoming water pH is so high that compared to this pH, then the sudden change in pH can also kill your fish, and then it can also crash again in a couple of days because the acid might use up all the pH that you put in your water change. So these are some of the things that I'm going to cover in this video. Watch till the end. You don't want to miss out on everything, and these are some of the questions you guys had for me. So I'm actually putting some tap water that's aged and dechlorinated into the tank very slowly. I'm probably going to put about 6 liters, which is about 1.5 gallons, into each tank. And that's going to bring up my pH to about 6.5, which is a lot, but these guys can handle it. But any higher than that might not be good for them in too fast. So I'll do this on this side a little bit. You can see how much water I've actually put in. Not even a lot. I only put like 5 cups of this, which is about 600 milliliters on each side. So each 2 cups is about 1 liter. You know. So I'll put some more on the other side. I'm sorry, it was really hot, so I had to take off my shirt. What is going on, FishTube? Welcome back to AquaMalik. Today's video is about pH crashes. Now the pH in this tank actually crashed to 4.8. So I'm going to measure that for you right now. This is actually water that I took out from the tank. I took out about 75% of the water, and I'm moving now water from this tank that's on the right hand side, which has a pH of about 5.3. So you can see a siphon that the water is getting siphoned over to this side. That's just to bring up the pH in here on the tank that's on the left hand side to about 5, which is like better pH than 4.8. I ideally want to have my pH in these tanks close to 7, but because of the high population density and because of the high amounts of food that I put in these tanks, the pH regularly does go down to about 5 or a little bit lower, which at that point becomes unsustainable for life for some of these animals. A lot of the placos and stuff do not do well when the pH goes down to about 4.5 or so. You can lose fish. So it's not a big situation for me personally because I'm on top of it, but if I was working full time and I didn't have the time to be on top of this would be a real disaster situation where I would not notice the tank pH going down below 5, and all of a sudden it would be at 4 and my fish would be dead, and I'd be home one day and I wouldn't know why my fish died, and I'd be on Facebook posting it saying, hey, my fish died, because I wouldn't be doing all this stuff. For a lot of home aquarists, this is why when things happen and they're like, I don't know, the fish were fine yesterday, this could be a big reason why your fish are dying without any diseases or without you bringing any new fish or anything or any signs of diseases on the fish. So if the fish died suddenly, or if you had a mass die-off, or even 1 or 2 fish died, chances are your pH crashed below unsustainable level for the particular type of fish. Now you can see in here this pH is now dropping in the bucket. It's at about 4.8. It says 4.83 right now. That's what I've been measuring so far, 4.82. So it's about 4.8 and quite unsustainable for life. These corridoras don't seem to mind at all. They probably would spawn once I put the new water in, but everybody else in these tanks cannot live below 5, so it's definitely an issue, and we are remedying it right now. So the first thing I did was I took out majority of the water. Now this is not recommended if you don't have another tank beside it that has similar pH but slightly higher than the problematic tank. So if you had a 4.8 tank here and a 5.5 tank here, you can do what I'm doing here by taking out 75% of the water out of the one tank and then flooding the other tank water back into this tank through like an overflow system or like a siphon or something like that. Now by doing that, I brought up the pH in here actively to about 5. So we'll measure that in a second and I'll show you guys, and this tank is at about 5.3. So the next step is going to be the most crucial step, and what I'm going to do in my situation, I don't really have to worry about the water line being here for a few days. So I'm going to leave the water where it is right now, and I'm going to continue to add a container like a gallon or half a gallon. I would say probably about a half a gallon of water into each tank every few hours over the next couple of days, and then ideally bring the water level back up to here. Now the problem with this is I am going to actively bring my pH to about 7 or 6.8 or something like that over the next 24 hours by doing this, but the additional calcium carbonate that I'm adding into the tank, because my water in my tap is about 4 kH, so it's not a lot of calcium carbonate already to begin with, is going to be used up by the acid that's already in here. So this acid is going to nullify that calcium carbonate, and therefore there's not going to be any buffering capacity in this particular tank moving forward after about the next 2 days. So the pH is going to start going down again, and within a week it will be back at about 5. So this tank, I did a water change last week, both these tanks, the same thing that I'm doing right now. So this is a constant struggle that I'm having to deal with these two particular tanks because of the high population density and the high amounts of food, and also because I'm constantly having to do these smaller volume water changes. I cannot put 50% of water even in here right now because that would be detrimental to the fish. The sudden pH rise would potentially kill them, so I cannot do that, so I have to slowly bring this up. The remedy to this particular issue is essentially to do a few water changes like this over a few days. So you can do maybe 25% water change per day or 20% water change per day for about a week, and then try to bring it up that way. And then even then, chances are in 2 weeks your pH will start crashing again. So this is going to be a constant issue if your pH does crash. So the best idea is to have some KH plus at hand and stay on top of your pH, especially on your breeding tanks and stuff like that, where you have expensive breeding groups and you don't want to lose the fish in those tanks, as well as even in your grow-out tanks where you have expensive fry that are worth potentially thousands of dollars that you don't want to lose. Now in my case, because I am at home, I'm checking these tanks every day, so when this type of stuff does happen, I get to fix it real quickly by making these additional required steps by doing these water changes and fixing the pH issue myself. But in a home aquarium where you might have a busy schedule and you might not have the time to actually spend on your tanks every single day to check them and all that stuff, and you might not actively have this type of equipment, you might only be using a test kit that doesn't show you that your pH is below a certain amount even. So these situations you don't want to have. You want to avoid these as much as possible, because these are one of the main reasons how fish can die afterwards once you've had them. And then if it's a sudden death, chances are this is one of the main culprits. Heater malfunctions are one of the other ones. Like overfeeding and stuff like that could potentially be it too. But if you don't do any of those things and you don't know what happens, then chances are your pH could have crashed to an unsustainable level for some of these animals, and they died because of that. So check your pH regularly, stay on top of it, keep it at a regular rate, a regular level. So if you water that's coming out of your tap is, let's say, 7, then try to keep your pH at 7 in all your tanks. If your water coming out of your tap water is like 7.8, then try to keep it at that level, unless you have to alter it for breeding or something like that. And if you're doing that, then you have to really stay on top of it. And if you have a highly populated tank or overcrowded tank where you're putting a lot of high nutritious, high protein food, then your phosphates can build up real fast, like in these two setups here. Like the TDS in this tank, for example, I'll show you right now, is the TDS is 332 parts per million. So about 150 parts above what my tap water is, meaning there's 150 parts of something else in here. And it's about 40 parts of nitrates. It doesn't go above that because the heavy plant load in here. So the rest of that, I'm assuming, is phosphates in the form of most likely phosphoric acid, which is why these pHs are like at 5 instead of 7.5, which is what the tap water in my area is. The oak leaves does not help, but I'm actually using those as additional food sources for some of my animals, so there's nothing I can do. They need to eat the oak leaf to stay healthy, so therefore I cannot take that out either, and this is what I'm having to deal with. And so I figured I'm going to make a video and show you guys the reality of an altering pH and also pH crashes, what can happen, how you can lose your fish in this scenario, and how you can remedy this when it does happen, because these seem to be some of the things that are not covered in majority of the videos on YouTube, and these are a lot of the questions that you guys always have for me. So I figured this is going to help some of you guys, and the one advice I can give you guys is that if you don't have to alter your pH, don't alter your pH. If you can avoid a pH crash, avoid the pH crash, because it is very harmful to some of these animals if the pH does fluctuate, especially adult animals, animals that are from the wild and stuff, that are used to being at a specific pH. These type of fluctuations might not be healthy for them. Animals that come from really high pHs, these type of fluctuations might not be healthy for them. These particular animals do come from rivers where the pH does go down to these type of levels, so it is not too detrimental for these particular animals to go down to 5 pH, but below that it does become detrimental to some of these animals as well, especially to the plecos. So these are some of the things to consider, and hope this helps some of you guys. And if you guys have any questions, comment below and let me know. If you want me to clarify anything, I can do that. I'm also going to be making a lot of update videos on this topic to help you guys manage these type of situations in your home aquariums, so that you do not lose fish to pH crashes, and you can maintain stable pHs throughout the time in between water changes in your aquariums. Happy fish keeping, everybody. I'll see you guys on the next one. I love you all. God bless you.
Produced by Malik.